Everyone, welcome to the Mindset Matters video. For today, our topic is going to be what is the relationship with the self? And I'm really excited because it's been a very long time since I've had a conversational interview. And I have here my mentor, a beautiful teacher, a coach herself, Christina. And Christina, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you, Sandra. I'm so excited too, and it's so wonderful to be with you and talk with you always. You're a dear friend and an incredible coach and mentor to me too. I would just maybe give some information about myself. And I'm a certified brain coach and a self-directed neuroplasticity coach, dealing with trauma, memory, reframing, fear reconciliation, emotional resilience, mindful brain, as I call it, and the senses awareness, the somatic sensations, breath work, and also I'm involved in neuromodulation techniques. So that's about what I'm doing. I've been working with myself mostly for many, many years, starting with primal therapy many, many years ago. And that's when actually I realized that emotions are only emotions. It's not me, don't become the emotion. Feel the emotion, but don't become the emotion, as I say. So that was a start. And then I have been involved in EFT. And then I actually decided to study more the brain. So I like the technical part of it so I can understand what's going on in the mind and body and the brain, and the body, the gut, the body, the heart, the brain, it's all cooperating. So that's why I like to call it the mindful brain, because we need to have that in how do you call that? Anyways, to know that. And how much we can change according to how much we accept around ourselves and how much we accept our emotions and somatic senses, and how much we can change the perceptions, but very important to change the energy, which is actually the brain is working with frequencies. Everything is working with frequencies.
Yeah, for some of you who do not know, again, let me rekindle your relationship with me as well because it's been so long. So again, my name is Sandra Rojo and I am your hostess, and I'm a mindset strategist coach. And if you want to know more about my bio, you can always go to mindsetmatterswithsandra.com, and there you'll find a part of my experience as well. Christina and I have known each other for many years by now, and we were introduced by someone. And since that first phone call, Christina, we have just been
Yes.
forever friends and kindred spirits. And I just think she's a wonderful partner, and we have a lot of great projects for the future as well. So you'll get to see us more. But let's dive into the topic of relationship with the self. And for some of you that are watching, this is a very deep topic that requires more than just an hour or half an hour conversation, but we want to start the dialogue in the hopes that it stimulate or elicit more inquiry about the relationship with yourself. Now, one of the things that I believe, and Christine, I think you as well, relationship with self is super important because that is the foundation also of how we interact and connect with other people. So let's somewhat define, right? Because we can go down the rabbit hole. Let's define what the relationship with the self is. It's the ongoing connection that we have with our mind, with our body, and our spirit, right? It's how we speak to ourselves through self-talk. Another is how you treat yourself, right? This could be through your habits, through the choices you make in life, through your desires, right? So that's one part of it. Another part is that you're looking at your worth, you're looking at your needs, you're looking at your desires, your goals, your accomplishments, things that you want for yourself. And there's a lot of intrinsic value. So it's a lot about trusting yourself, how to handle life, making decisions, because we all, right, are consistently making choices in life, and to be safe with your own feelings as well.
You said it all, more or less.
High level.
At high level. Yes, it's very to go back to your list of what it is. Of course, speaking to yourself, how you speak, your thoughts, your self-talk, as you say, it's very important to recognize, for example, when you're ruminating. This is a sign that the brain is not operating in a, let's say, in a peaceful way with yourself. And there's some emotions behind that, a fear mostly. And that's very difficult to stop, actually, because it's already in a mode of, it's actually in a fight, flight, freeze mode, one of the aspects of the amygdala in the brain. And also the default mode network, I just mentioned this, which is actually educated to do this, both for good and for bad. This is something in order to learn yourself, and you have to study yourself in this way, as you say, and see how do you talk to yourself, how do you talk about what is worrying yourself or what is annoying yourself about other people or about yourself. And of course, this is also then the connection, as you said, how to treat yourself. Many times when you're ruminating, it's often fear-based, some kind of insecurity behind that. You're actually not in a very good place to take care of yourself also, to, maybe do things that would stop the rumination, like going for a walk, like eating something healthy, get some energy, calling a friend, talking about other things, not ruminating, of course.
Well, and I think that ruminating sometimes is like, for me, I've noticed before I could really accept the idea that or I didn't even understand that I needed to talk out loud about things, not necessarily to vent, but to be able to process what I was
Mhm.
going through. And so when I didn't have that individual to be able to hold that space for me, right? You've been
Mhm.
that for me. But I'm saying years ago, I
Yes,
would find myself ruminating because I think my brain was trying to process what was happening. And when you don't have another person to bounce information, then that can really get you caught up in it,
yeah.
unfortunately. And can be a negative.
Your brain is always guessing, so it guesses according to your previous experiences. And when you go through difficult things and you have some traumatic experiences around situations in your life, automatically your brain will start pulling up what is related. It is always guessing in order to make you safe, thinks it makes you safe. So then we will immediately start ruminating, because that's the way this specific part in the brain is actually doing it by itself. And that's why it's very important to recognize this, because the more we ruminate, the more difficult it is for us to have logic, which is the prefrontal cortex, because when those emotions take over and these parts of the brain is on automatic mode, our logic, our prefrontal cortex shuts down, so we can't get any good solution at that moment. So that's why it's very important to remember, as you said, to look at your needs and your desires outside of that, and try to do things that are good for you. So you will get out of that.
Why don't you tell the audience what the role of the prefrontal cortex is?
Well, the prefrontal cortex is the logic, and this is how we deal with decisions and how we make decisions. And it's very interesting, good. We should be in the prefrontal cortex most of the time, but we are not. Because when we are in the prefrontal cortex, we have a different balance. We are not emotionally triggered, and we don't have these reactions two things, a trigger, a reaction, and then an action. So when we are we are not in what we call the sympathetic nervous system, because everything goes around the sympathetic or the parasympathetic, that is the peace part nervous system. So when we are in the prefrontal cortex, we can be rational in a healthier way, because we are not in the sympathetic nervous system. We are not in the stress mode so much. And it takes a lot of work to recognize, because that we are not in the prefrontal cortex, let's say. And of course, the brain is always cooperating, all kind of system. It's not like it's one here and one there, but it's actually when we get emotional, we get out of the function of the prefrontal cortex is shutting down. And this is actually to protect us, so the survival mode can take over. So it's very interesting to understand that we are made like this for a good reason. The only thing is that in the society that we live in today, we don't have the dangers and we don't have to use so much of this survival mode. We should not use it anymore, because we cannot act on it. We do not fight or fly or flight, or we can freeze. Many people do freeze when they get
or they say now the fawning, the
on the
fawning
phone.
is,
Yes,
which I would
and
do. I would do a lot of the fawning.
okay,
Yeah, when I
yeah,
was younger.
okay, yeah, yeah. I was more like a fight person, but
Hmm.
of course using the other modes too. So I would actually be kind of astonished, even as young, how could I be so different?
Right.
So suddenly I was in a freeze mode, form
Hmm.
mode, and suddenly I was in a fight mode, and I couldn't understand. I thought, something was wrong with me. I didn't understand that it was according to the experiences and to the way my brain had learned to use the
Right.
inputs. So it's very interesting to see many people maybe they could observe themselves and try to understand what kind of these survival modes that they use. Is it fight? Is it flight? Is it freeze? Is it faint? Some people even get the feeling of fainting all the time, and that's also some kind of, the animals, they play dead
The
when they are
opossum
attacked.
dip. I was just thinking about that right now. I was thinking
Yeah.
about that.
And
So, yeah, so it's the survival
so it's good for us not
situations.
to be in the survival mode. And
Mhm.
the thing is that we are mostly in the reaction mode, in the sympathetic nervous system, which belongs to the kind of, let's say, one
Mhm.
version of the survival mode.
Mhm.
And that is actually really, really triggering a lot of toxic chemicals in our brain.
Mhm.
And that's why it's very important, for example, to sleep. When we have had a stressful situation, we have to accept that we need to sleep more. We need to be healthier. We need to, take care of our um, gut biome,
Yeah,
and
because the serotonin lives more in the gut than it does in
yeah,
the brain.
yeah, serotonin, all these separate dopamine, serotonin, and so on, they work, but they do not work separately in a way.
Hmm.
They always
Hmm.
cooperate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we used to say we get a dopamine crash, for example, when we have been working on something and we are very motivated and the dopamine is on all the time. But then the brain tries to balance this. And this is actually not making us feel so good. It tries to recover. It always try to find homeostasis, the
Hmm.
brain and the body. So what is very important is for us to notice it before our body goes out in reaction. And that is taking care of ourselves. We have to see it, okay, now I'm not feeling good. Something, I had whatever experience and I maybe the emotions, they went through it, we recognized them and everything. The perception is still kind of based on our subconscious and not we cannot do at this point so much about that, but we can recognize when we are in a sympathetic when our system is in a sympathetic mode. And
Hmm.
also when we go into more parasympathetic. And this is really the most important because then our prefrontal cortex will start to work again. Our gut and breathing will correct itself. Breathing is really, really good to
Yeah.
connect, the fastest way to connect, to bring us from sympathetic to
So now
parasympathetic.
that we've talked a lot about kind of how certain things work in the brain and how it influences, and that's why we were saying in the very beginning that the relationship with yourself is an ongoing connection with
Exactly.
mind, body, and spirit. And as cliche
Yeah.
as the mind, body, and spirit language is, it's really true.
Well, so when we get to the parasympathetic nervous system more, it's actually where the positive neuroplasticity starts to take place, and we can start to what you call it, transition into, what did you say, Sandra? Transition into changes in
But
ourselves.
let's talk about awareness, that as you begin to become aware of yourself, you're understanding that perhaps you have some challenges with the relationship with yourself, with self-talk, with other people. You get triggered very easily.
Key to the door, this self-awareness, and you will realize your perceptions, and you can start to doubt if they are actually serving you. And actually, it starts mostly with recognizing your emotions
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and letting the emotions go through your body,
Mm-hmm.
have this somatic connection. And I think that when you have a somatic connection together with the awareness, you also tend to become more spiritual as a result later on
I think
because you
so too.
trust your body and your mind, and then
But we're so used
you're,
to, I think we're so used to, especially in the United States, the culture has demanded to prove yourself, you know, via
yes,
accomplishments and goal setting and everything.
yes,
So the
mhm,
driver is always, what can I do instead of
yeah,
who can I be?
yeah,
Right. And I know you
exactly,
and I have talked about this. And of
yeah,
course, I live, for some of you who don't know, I'm an Italian citizen as well. And I lived in Italy for many, many years. Christina is in Greece, although she is Swedish, born and raised. And that's a different culture than some of the
yes,
Southern Europeans. But the point here is that there is a lot more flexibility and acceptance, I think,
yes,
in Latin countries and European, romantic language countries, like Spain and Portugal. And well, Greece is not Latin, but still it has that passion. Even Eastern Europeans can be very
yes,
passionate, to
mhm,
be honest. But I think that you're correct, as in when we get in touch with everything that we are, right? And Christine and I really promote being in touch with everything of who you are, not just trying to always rationalize and be logic about things and analytical, right? We want to get in touch with the emotions. How
yes,
important has it been for you, Christina, growing up in a different culture than Greece and then
yes, I can
coming to
say,
that?
mhm. I can say that actually, like we talk about different cultures and emotions and how we express them, and that at my time in Sweden also, we couldn't express emotions. We had to be rational or logic or be in the prefrontal cortex, as I said, which is not possible when, as a child, you are traumatized or have traumatic experiences. So I had to deal with my emotions on myself. And sometimes that would mean to shut down, to freeze, or sometimes that would be to different reactions, to be scared. I was very scared actually when I was a child because also I had a traumatic, very severe and beaten up by my father. That he was my mentor actually, but he was a little predictable. But of course, I was wanted to do other things, so I challenged him. And I'm probably very happy that I did that because that learned, I think that was how my survival mode learned to fight. And that
Mm.
has been very useful.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, on the contrary, just explained how we can change also our survival modes. Was a PTSD person after the Second World War. So she was frozen. She could never handle anything in her life when it was a conflict. And I was thinking now, many years later on, so how wonderful wouldn't it have been if I knew why my mother was in a freeze mode? And I didn't need, and then I wouldn't have judged her as a person. It was
Mhm.
just her brain, it was not her. It was her brain reacting like that. And that's why I think that awareness and self-respect and what we say self-love. I never like this because, probably I love myself, but that's not the first that comes into my mind. I can say I can appreciate myself. I mean, we have to use the words that fits with us because also different cultures, we have different words that
Mhm.
we use that play a huge role in how we treat ourselves too.
Mhm.
For example, in Sweden, we don't use a lot of words and people are kind of very stuck in their,
Mhm.
like in a small box. I
Mhm.
don't know if and in Greece they use all this kind of, how Greek language has all those words that they use and they play with them. So emotionally, they are much more expressive because they can
Mhm.
use words for their
Mhm.
emotions. And of course, it's also permitted in Greece to have emotions
Well, I
as a
mean,
culture.
it's permitted in Italy as well,
Yeah,
and
yes.
I'm not saying that everything is perfect in a rose garden over there, but
No, no,
I was
not
very
at all. No.
surprised when I lived there, the bluntness, it's like if you're angry, I'm angry,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you're feeling confused, you say that. And I think that now in the way I grew up, as a child, I was able to, be able to express myself and be able to,
Mm.
but then as I started to become, an older teenager, noticed that my mother really was just very critical of anything that
Yes,
could allude to something different. And it was not safe to express
exactly.
anything,
Yeah.
any complaint or anything. They
Mm.
could lash out, right? And then
Yeah.
later, like you with your mother,
Yeah.
I found out that my mother had been struggling with depression since she was a
Mm.
teenager. And
Mm.
so she fell into this cycle. But my mother wasn't a low-key depressed person. She was an angry, depressed person.
Yeah.
And so that made it very difficult. So she was very volatile with her words. I like the idea of being able to express what is. I think it's very healthy. And when you observe certain families and you observe that it is unsafe or they feel cold or they keep it inside, I don't think this is very healthy whatsoever.
No,
So I
it's
think
very
that
misleading for your brain,
I
and for
bet.
yourself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
bet. And, and I grew up sometimes where and periodically you'd hear somebody say, well, you're too sensitive, which is definitely gaslighting.
Yeah.
Well, there's something there to explore when somebody says you're too sensitive. You do one picks up certain cues
Yeah. You're
and
too sensitive for them because they have a
yeah,
reaction too. So it's not
yeah.
you, but
Well,
they don't like it.
usually people like this too, I've found, are not very much in touch with their emotions and they're not
Yeah.
very emotionally mature. Remember last year, was it last year where I was really frustrated and I called you over a certain situation that's personal that I'm not going to remember. And
Yeah.
I said, I almost felt like a kid and I said
Mhm.
something like, I'm just really frustrated and you're not listening to me. Remember, I said
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
you stepped into this role where you weren't. I mean, I didn't say anything really bad. It's just in that moment, I felt like I could be safe to say, I'm not being hurt or something. And I think I
Yeah.
even started, I was
But that's
frustrated,
how it should be.
but
We
it should,
should be.
and then you just said it's okay. And then it was just like I don't know what you did, but it was beautiful. And
Yeah,
that's
sweetheart.
how I base my relationships. And I'm very, very discerning about who I share. I have a very close-knit group. And of course, you're one of those people
Yeah,
that,
sweetheart.
that I know, right, that we can cultivate those emotions. That's
Right.
part of having a good relationship with the self is
Yes.
being discerning and understanding our emotions and being able to express them and then
And of
finding the
course,
people.
also to be able to have people around you that know you as so much that you can say things like that, that you can, because you cannot always get back to your prefrontal cortex. It's not possible, you are in an emotion. So you need also a safe place with people, not only alone, with people where you can just express yourself but of course afterwards or continue in immediate continuation with your own awareness. But we need people to just let us be.
Well,
We
and
need,
I also think that there is a component that might be a little controversial to say this because this is one of the criticisms I have of personal development. In many personal development circles with different methods and teachers, there seems to be no room for tenderness. There seems to be no room,
yes,
like, oh, you
very
just got to
true.
get, and I think what I have found, there's an element of tenderness. It's not
Mm.
just about like, oh, I understand you.
No.
It's more than that. It's about just nodding your head. It's about
Mm.
taking that person's hand if you're physically with them.
Yeah.
Or in your case, because we live in different countries, it's about, even just saying, yes, sweetheart.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
sometimes you'll say,
Yeah.
yes, sweetheart, or I can just, and
Mm.
what it does is it
Hmm.
reminds me, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm not going to be
Exactly.
beaten up or spoken down
Or
to or
criticized or whatever.
criticized when you're ready,
Mm.
like you said. The amygdala, right? You're not in your prefrontal cortex in that
No.
moment. So all that person is doing when they start yelling or getting defensive, like how many times did it happen to me? It's like I would could hold that space for them, but what was it? It's like, oh, you're doing this, oh, you're doing that, and how come you're
Mm.
speaking to, you're attacking me, you're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody is obviously triggered. And so one of the two people must be, for that moment, the more intelligent,
Yes.
emotionally intelligent
Mm.
person. And I
Mm.
guarantee you it's a choice, but it has to be the other person temporarily, right?
Yes.
So that
You
the
know,
person who's triggered can really calm down. There's no sense
they
of,
do. Yeah.
you know?
But you see, these people who do also who did this to you, and they don't get out of their trigger. So it's very difficult to be present with these kind of people who gaslight you and attack you and criticize you. I mean, the only thing is to just get out, get away from them, even if it is for an hour, or
Mhm,
whatever. And sometimes people can't do that, in families or in a relationship, or
mhm,
maybe they are somewhere together and they can't.
mhm,
And then it's very important to just focus on your inner, your heart, focus on some kind of positive emotion within you, where
mhm,
you give yourself space
mhm,
until you can deal with other things. Just and not get triggered back, as of course we get
mhm.
triggered, but at least to realize that we are getting triggered, but we have then to get
Well,
into
where I've
some kind of
changed, where in my life,
safeness.
yeah, where what I love about it, about really appreciating myself more, and like you, I work on myself, right? I
Yes,
work a lot, I study a lot, I've expanded so much. I think because I've become, each and every day, I'm a better coach, I'm a better
yeah.
service-oriented person to others, precisely because, right, and you are too, I think, because we work on ourselves and we're not
Yeah.
afraid to go there. And
And you're amazing with that. I
oh,
admire you because,
thank
yes, you
you.
really work with yourself and you really question everything and you really challenge yourself to move forward,
I do.
So a
But
big,
I think you and I are very determined
yes.
people. We don't give up on ourselves, no
Mm,
matter how difficult. But I think also by this situation, of having that determination, which is obviously resilience,
yes,
it's tremendous. I mean, it's a
it
sign,
is.
I think, also of emotional intelligence. And
Yeah.
I can totally say that in my life, that in the last couple of years, obviously you're included in this. I'm just so blessed to have people that when there is a trigger, or when you're having a
Mm,
discussion with another person, that immediately, right, it can be talked about. In fact, I have it so much now that, because I'm somebody who wants to resolve, right?
yes.
In the
Yes, you are.
past, I had
Mhm.
people who would either ghost you or give you silent treatment
Mm,
and make those excuses. Well, I just have to go away. And it's like,
mm,
okay, it's been like 5 weeks, it's been 2 weeks, it's been like, how long?
mm,
And then never want to talk about it.
mm.
And now it's like, women and men in my life now are people that we just are mature about it. It's like, I might need a day to process something, but I'm
Mm,
not going to withdraw my friendship from you. I'm not going to withdraw my love from you.
yeah.
Right. So I've done so many changes in my life. And I think it's not about, we can go right into the attraction part. And
Mm-hmm.
I love when you say this, because before I would say, well, I would attract all these people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I love how you say it as well, is that we may always attract certain people in our
We
life,
choose, our brain is
but we
choosing.
choose
Yeah.
because
And
we
it's
know
again,
better. We've experienced something better. Yeah.
it's your brain guessing, predicting what you need, because the brain think that you need what you have experienced most, even if that's bad.
Yeah.
Of course, it doesn't know. So we have to do this neuroplastic work with ourselves to find out that it's not what is just popping up, or when, as you say, when we are attracting, when we feel attracted, it's just because the brain feels familiar with it.
Mhm.
It's not because I meet many people and they are scared because they say that I'm attracting this. And I say, you're not. It's just that you haven't had the possibility to choose yet. You
Well,
need.
let's go there just for a moment, unpack it in such a way.
Mm-hmm,
And I'm going to bounce off a little bit of this because it is abstract. We know that
mm-hmm,
in new age groups, and we know that in personal development, this word attraction, right? Law of attraction. I
mm,
mean, it comes up all the time.
mm,
And I'm going to contradict myself, and that's
mm-hmm.
okay because that's
Yeah,
kind
of
of how we
course.
we work things out, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I both are in agreement that paradoxes exist, and you can hold both paradoxes and still have them have some truth, both of them.
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm.
the idea of attraction is really interesting because you and I do believe, and it's actually, I think, scientifically proved, we're frequency, we emanate,
Of course.
we're
Yes.
electrical, right? Our brains are electrical,
Everything
so
is
to speak.
electromagnetic.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I think that there's not everything is bad about the law of attraction kind of concepts. It's the way people are using that. And so
Yes.
I like
Mm-hmm.
better to say we're choosing in a way. Then when we become less ignorant and we become educated and we start working on ourselves, we automatically start choosing healthier. We
Yes.
start
And we
choosing
start to
health.
create.
We
We
start to
create.
create. We start to create,
Creating is the same as attracting,
yeah,
but it's a choice.
yeah,
When you're attracting, it's
yeah,
people have learned that it's,
great,
oh my gosh, I don't feel good. What am I
right,
attracting now? But when you say that you choose, and then you, based on the same frequency, um, physics, how to
right,
say, you create. You call it creation. I create from this energy. I create, but it's actually, as you say, also like it's not bad to want to please people. It's not bad to be nurturing. Actually, I think that if we could connect more, many times women. Unfortunately, there is a difference, or fortunately, between men and women. I mean, I think men are actually more kind of practically want to protect you in a way if they are okay, and women are more nurturing. It's the hormones, it's a lot of things, how the brain works depending on the hormones and changing, oxytocin when you have very close, when you have children or very close relationships, it's a nurturing hormone, it's a love hormone.
yeah,
And of course men have a little of it too, but not in the same amount. So we don't need to be non-nurturing and I don't know what, suppliers to other people who are
mm-hmm.
supportive. We need to find the balance that is good for us, because some women are kind of, I mean, I see the younger generation more or less say, oh no, um, we have to nurture the same. They don't even call it nurturing anymore. We exchange, I don't know what they call it, services or whatever. Now,
I
and
think
what happens with their chemicals, the brain chemicals? How do they work? Maybe they got put aside too. I'm very suspicious about going against nature in that way, because it is in our neurochemicals and our nervous system to
but
be
it just goes to show you how
exactly.
the indoctrination, just like we're talking about, we're consistently, like I consistently challenge these concepts,
Yes,
the word
we
happiness,
need
the
to
word
challenge concepts.
forgiveness. No, we do, because I think that people don't dig enough of really what does this mean. They just listen, kind of like in politics, or just listening to their party, and
Exactly.
then
I
they
think it's
just
a
they
new good
don't,
idea, you know?
yeah, well, they don't critically think about what these things mean. And so I like that you're bringing this up. I think that right there almost sounds to me like just another way to fracture the connection that we have. The bottom
Yes.
line is, when I was healing from some pretty tragic times in my life,
Mm.
one of the things I learned about the connection with myself and the relationship with myself, the reality that I need, not it wasn't just, it wasn't a want, I need
Mm.
nurturing, I need
Yes.
tenderness.
Yes.
You have been tremendously, I mean, I can't imagine if I could feel that across our telephone conversations and through the last years. Can you imagine how much more faster my healing would have been had we been connected physically, where we could
Yes.
spend time
Yes.
together,
Hmm.
and I could have that hug, I could have.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening to this, I am unapologetic about it, because right away we want to label people as being, what is it, codependent or
Yeah.
needy, or
Needy. That's
yeah,
also good.
needy, or things like that. And it's like, no, I mean, I knew that I started to also a lot heal different parts that were so attacked and brutally cruel to me, when
Mm.
I was able to express almost this girl could
Mm.
come out
Mm.
inside of me, and even
Yeah.
not behave as a child, not like role play, but
No,
be
but
able to
be
be that
vulnerable,
girl and
and
be able
yeah.
to have that held,
Mm.
and be able to have the other person say to me, I love that about you. I love that
Mm.
you can be kind of like this, kind of that
Mm.
child. That to me is safety.
Yeah, you
Safe.
waited many years to hear that.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy
Yeah.
that, and it's also that you recognize that you need it, because that's what I meant
Well, I
before.
denied it. I mean,
Yeah,
because we're supposed to, you're not supposed to, and I had
yeah,
other colleagues that were indoctrinated. So I mean, they were cold as ice. You could almost
yeah,
cut, because you're indoctrinated. You have to get over it. You're the
yeah.
one that you
Yeah,
are you have to rely only on yourself, and it's your patterns, and it's this, and
yeah.
it's the, and you're, and
You
or
have
you
to
go to
put
therapy.
boundaries.
Yeah.
And
Or
here we see boundaries again. You put boundaries. If you put boundaries, you don't need this. Then you will not be needy if you do. It's not true.
it's
We
not true.
need to be, we are, like when you get older, and even, I mean, your soul, your basic needs for love and nurturing
I love
never
that.
changes. It doesn't go away. It's it's increased when you're a child, and it gets increased the older you get. It's normal. That's how it works.
Well, and what
So
I love about why I totally respect and admire you tremendously is because you've been through the ringer yourself. You've been through a lot
yeah,
through your childhood, and you have not been bitter. You have, in fact,
no,
if
yeah.
anything, the way you are with your children, the way
It's
you
too
are,
too time consuming for me to be bitter. It takes too much of my time.
but
It's
yet
like
we see that. But yet we
technical.
see that
It's
from
true.
people that practice different modalities.
Yeah.
I'm one of those coaches who is, I'm not going to stop telling people, you do need love, and you need tenderness
Safety
in
is
safety,
safe,
in order to
protected.
heal, you
Of
know.
course,
And how
yes.
many times it was just like the whip, the proverbial whip that people
Yes.
give
Get
us,
well. Get
exactly.
over it.
Get over it. And you're going
Get the
like,
healing now.
yeah,
But
we're
you
different.
can't give what you don't accept
Yeah.
that you need more,
Wow.
actually, because nobody has anything. Everybody has to be somehow connected with the inner self, yourself, this eternal self, let's call it, that never really is. It's like this universal quantum field of yourself that if you work with yourself, and like you say here, with getting to know yourself, and what how did we start this little call, your relationship with the self, that's why it's so important to work with that, and to have somebody like you, for example, that can coach
And you
uh,
too. You
people.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
When you feel safe and when you realize some of these things we talked about, you can change it. It's so possible if you feel safe and you're coached in a way that is good for you. And you change all this. And this is what is so beautiful with life, you know. It's always there. You can always change.
And I think as facilitators of change, you and I, we both
Yeah.
also
Facilitate
believe
your change. I like that.
yeah, space. And it's not just about the venting. We don't
Yeah.
go
No.
into with our clients or when we're speaking to people. There needs to be some form of expression to come out because some of the people
Mhm.
that I've worked with, and I'm sure with you, it's been years since they've been able to be accepted. I think people need to really
Yes.
be accepted where they are, you know,
You know, most
and
people have never been accepted.
yeah,
It's a new walk. You walk a new path
yeah,
because most of the people have traumatic experiences. That's why I don't like also we talked about their trauma, or they focus on five different traumas they had. But uh, most of, I mean, even people, children in kind of good families or whatever, balanced families, they
yeah,
all have traumas
yeah,
according to
that's
where they
true.
were and what was contained in their life.
That's true.
So it's actually something we have to learn,
Yeah,
that it's okay to start from now
yeah,
and see what accept what we have, all these strange coping
yeah.
mechanisms, all these triggers, maybe all this fear, all this anger, that probably fear, all this can change.
But I think it is important to help people accept that they can be angry and then look at that anger. And beneath that anger, there's a lot of grief. But I think that part of having a healthy relationship with yourself is accepting that you do have the plethora of emotions
Exactly.
and
Mm-hmm.
how to navigate that, how to
Mm-hmm.
manage that as well,
Mm.
not just know where it comes from, because so many
No,
people are
it's not so
wanting to
important to
analyze.
know.
It's not so
Yes.
important anymore where it comes from. It's
No. I
learning
mean,
how to manage and navigate.
yes, and to accept, some people, for example, with me, you could easily say, "Oh my God, she's angry," but my anger is maybe not so deep because I'm expressing it more like. But there are other people who are really looks to be really calm and concise, and
Ex-
actually they have so much anger that
they
they
do.
are scared to even hear the word anger.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is difficult for these people. They really need to go through whatever we talked about earlier, really try to start observing themselves and getting, the somatic sensations, their way of thinking, if they are ruminating, if how do they support not expressing anger? Because they support it. They have a way of supporting that. And that's actually the most difficult, is to deal with people who have just shut the door to the anger, but they have it.
Mhm.
And it's much more easy to work with people who are angry, even if it's not really controllable, like younger age. But that's a healthy, more healthy.
How to practice. I like the word practice, more
Yeah.
healthier ways, healthier habits for the self to
Mm.
establish more of that. What would you,
Yeah.
what's something that you would,
Well, there is something we learn in Brain Academy. It's called LMNNOP, actually. It's like the six pillar of brain health and body health. And it's actually to move, you know, love, actually L, and move, motion, uh, nature, if you can get to that, novelty, new things
Mhm.
to learn. O, which is for omega, it actually means look at what you're eating. You need to nurture your body also, not only your
That's
your
right.
soul. Yeah. And pauses, take pauses in reflecting, and this is for some people actually very difficult to take pauses because they're all the time on the they work, they have children, or they have activities all the time. They run from the gym home and they do this and they do something else and they do a diet instead of just looking at a healthy way of eating. They start the diet programs with a rigid, they have to do that too. And then they come back home and everybody's tired, and then they have the phone and they communicate on the phone, and this is everything is actually the opposite of what I said before. You have to do the other things, these pillars of health, which is actually brain health, which is also body, mind and body. And the pauses, the last thing, is really important. And some people, they get nearly sick when they take pauses.
Hmm.
They feel depressed, the dopamine drops, and
Well, the
they
dopamine
don't know.
drops, that's why.
Yeah, and they but they don't know that it's normal.
Mhm.
Okay, I have a dopamine crash, let it come. Okay. You can take a glass of wine, you get some dopamine feeling, or you know, back, or if you don't drink, you can do something. I mean, there's always something. You can eat something healthy and nice, but you need to go through this. Life is not, you're not supposed to be happy and fine all the time. It doesn't work like that. They say, I want to be happy. Well, you know, how long, how many hours a
Well,
day?
you
I
know
don't
what I
know.
always say? I've been saying it for years. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't like the happy hype,
No,
the
what
happy
is that
hype. It's
happy?
like happy, and I just want to be like peace. I just want
Yes.
peace. What is peace? Do you know that when I go
Oh, it's so
through
funny. I
the
know.
peace, I said, well, what is, because we have to define what happiness is. We
Yes.
have to
And
define
words are really
to
important.
you,
We come
very
back to that
important,
again.
but they
Yes.
don't know. Do you know? And that's what I think you and I help facilitate as well, is
Yeah.
defining what does
What do you
this mean to
mean?
you? Yeah,
Yeah.
what does this mean to you? Well, and they go,
Exactly.
I don't know. They can tell you what they don't want, but this is normal. Obviously, this is a
It's
normal.
normal, of
Our
course.
brain
Yeah.
goes to the negative more than it does. So it's not
Or,
try to
or the
ridicule
brain
people.
doesn't know what peace is because we don't know. I mean, we haven't
Well,
we
of course
haven't
not. If you've
explained to
never
the
had peace,
brain.
how do you have peace? Like I want a
Yeah.
good
So
relationship with my husband, with my wife, with my whatever child.
yeah,
Okay,
the
when
brain would
did you
say,
have?
no, I haven't seen that.
Haven't seen that, So, Christina, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
this,
sweetheart.
and I
My
really love
pleasure.
this. Yeah, we will
I
do
forget
this.
time. I get into this flow thing when I talk to you. I just
Yeah, I know it's
forget
wonderful.
about time.
We will definitely be doing this again.